Well, howdy do, church. Um, I was recently discussing a topic with somebody as we are preparing for the BGCT, and I have a couple things to that end I want to start bringing up for the good of the church to let you all know about. Maybe some things you're not aware of, and then also after the convention when we come back, so that I can report to y'all that's I'm starting to gear up for that, and that's where my mind is. But philosophically, I've been thinking about in preparation the idea of association. In our church, as you know, we associate with the BGCT and the SBC at the national level, and of course we have our local association as well. Um, this leads to a question, and the purpose of associations is and always has been in Baptist life for the purpose of missions. This is not an issue of hierarchy. We believe in the autonomy of the local church. And as such, the only purpose for us to associate is for missions. But who should we associate with? This really is the question. And thinking through this, and it's an interesting question. What's the algorithm for deciding who you can and who you can't associate with? This also has to do with the sermon, especially on Sunday, right? I've mentioned my friends in other denominations, and about not judging folks even on denominational or doctrinal lines to a degree. So missions and working with other churches on missions inevitably means the planting of churches. Really, ultimately, that's what it is. Growing existing churches and planting new churches. But now this leads to the first idea. If I'm associating with somebody to plant a church, could I join the church that we just planted together? It's an interesting question. And maybe the first metric to decide who I can and can't associate with. It's a bit problematic, right? If I just planted a church with you, and at the end, after all of that effort, I can't even join the church I just planted with you. But there's a problem with that as a metric. Because you see, we're part of the Baptist General Convention of Texas, the BGCT. And the BGCT, if we're truly being honest, not only allows, but at least in the higher places that are, promotes in a very big way women pastors. And anybody that says otherwise is sticking their fingers in their ears. So I believe God has ordained that men are to be pastors, and therefore, if you actively accept a woman as a pastor, you are going against God, i.e., that's sin. So therefore, if I just planted a church with another BGCT church and they follow through on that conviction, an honest conviction, just one we disagree with, and put a woman in as pastor, I don't think I could join the church. I just helped them plant. So that algorithm either fails or this church needs to break its association with the BGCT, right? Well, maybe, but maybe the problem is not our association. Maybe it's our metric for deciding who to associate with. Maybe it's not, can I join a church I just planted with them? Instead, there's a term we use a lot that's not always entirely understood, and that's of like faith. And you say, well, if you disagree on fundamentals so much that you can't join each other's church, maybe it's not like faith. Well, I think perhaps the better metric, the better algorithm, if you will, is a twofold test. This is a little bit of me thinking out loud, and I welcome a little bit of conversation. This is a little bit of a blog after all, me thinking. The twofold test. One, do we have a like soteriology? That is to say, do we understand the same thing as far as what it means to be saved? which, if I were to put it in just two words, is for us sola fide, faith alone. There are many denominations which I may think is dominated by Christians that nonetheless mess this up. An example of this is Church of Christ, where they believe that you're saved through baptism. And they have a reason for this, a biblical reason as far as they're concerned. Just, I think they interpret things wrong. But it is nonetheless, regardless of the argument, does not match our soteriology. So the first test is, do we have a like understanding of what it means to be saved? And the second thing is, do we have a like understanding of the ordinances? Soteriology, to enter into the church, and ordinances, what you do when you get there. There are many things that God expects of his church, many things that the church does, but there are two primary functions that are God ordained as above all other commands in the church, the ordinances. So I think God ordains who the officers of the church should be. But I think above and first, before that, is the ordinances. Do you have the ordinances? Baptism and the Lord's Supper, which, by the way, in Reformation times, right now, especially as Baptists, baptism is the primary focus. But if you go back in time to the Reformation, the Lord's Supper actually was the primary focus. It's something we've kind of stopped caring as much about. But it's both. Baptism and the Lord's Supper is their proper view of both. And if you have an improper view of either one, we can't really associate. This allows, if that's where you draw the line, do you have a like understanding on these two criterion? We can disagree on there might be something I'm not thinking of that if you disagree outside of those two, I'm sorry, we can't associate. But generally speaking, that's going to be the line, at least as I'm thinking about it right now, that I'm going to draw in who we should associate with. We may not agree. We may have fundamental differences. But can we agree on these two things? If so, we have a like faith. We can work together. And no two churches are going to agree 100%, by the way. But sometimes we set the essentials aside when we start picking up less essential things. And we forget our true focus. And I said it a couple of years back when I had that debate with my friend in the Lutheran church. We disagree on baptism, but I'd rather you be taught what I disagree with and go and become a Lutheran, but know Christ, than not know Christ at all, right? And there's some people that get so twisted up. They say, you either believe exactly like me, or I'd rather, like, it's an idea that's just, it boggles my mind. Our focus is to rescue those who are perishing. And I can have a big umbrella, as big as possible, and thinking through it, I think it really is soteriology and your view on the ordinances. So my thoughts on where we draw the line, who we can associate with, what should be in the thought process on where we go with that. And again, my encouragement to brothers and sisters who maybe do differ with us on these two criterion, I will choose to work with those who agree with me on these, but I don't wish you any ill will necessarily just because we do disagree. We're just not going to associate for the purpose of missions. So if you've ever been curious how we decide, this is my 2 cents worth. Hope it helps a little bit. And if you have thoughts or opinions, let me know. Thanks.